Welcome to our deep dive into resilience and hope.
Yeah.
We're exploring Chapter 20 of Journey from Heartache to Hope,
Okay.
the story of Mary Alice Lott.
Right.
It's an incredible journey.
It is.
And you'll see that even when life deals you a tough hand,
Yeah.
there's always a path towards healing and growth.
What's so fascinating about Mary Alice's story is that it doesn't shy away from the complexities of faith, especially when faced with personal struggles. It's something a lot of people can relate to.
That's so true. It's not just about overcoming one hurdle, but navigating a series of them. An abusive marriage, the loss of both parents, even job instability, all within a short span of time.
Wow.
It makes you wonder how anyone can come out the other side intact.
Resilience often reveals itself in the most unexpected ways. We're going to trace Mary Alice's path, starting with her upbringing and the choices that led her to where she is now. You'll see how each experience, no matter how painful, ultimately contributed to her strength.
Okay, so let's set the stage. Mary Alice was a college athlete, a basketball player at Cal State University, San Bernardino. And it was during her freshman year that she became a Christian. Now, I know some people might think, oh, another athlete finding religion.
Right.
But for Mary Alice, this was a pivotal moment, wasn't it?
Absolutely. This conversion is key because faith becomes a guiding principle throughout her life. Even when she questions God's plan during her darkest moments, her faith remains a constant.
Okay.
It's really a story all about resilience and how people find hope
Right.
in the face of real challenges. I mean, this book is all about that.
Yeah.
Like just straight up hard stuff that people have to face.
Right.
And Mary Alice's chapter, really,
Mm.
I think it's like a masterclass in resilience.
What's really striking about her story is just how many trials she faced in such a short time. It's almost like biblical in scope.
Yeah, and she even compares herself to Job in the book.
Right.
Job, who lost everything.
Yeah.
But before we even get into all those challenges, it's helpful to know where she was coming from.
Right.
You know, she was a very devout Christian
Okay.
who had been waiting for a partner,
Yeah.
someone who shared her faith. And she finally got married at 41.
Oh, wow.
But things took a dark turn pretty quickly.
And this is really where we start to see, that insidious nature of abuse. It often starts so subtly, with disagreements that then escalate into emotional manipulation and control.
Yeah.
She found herself constantly, like walking on eggshells, afraid to upset her husband.
Yeah.
He isolated her from friends and family, even dictating who she could speak to.
It's so sad because she was just caught between this desire for this loving Christian marriage and the reality of, this abusive relationship.
Right.
And she tried to get guidance, from the church, outside the church. And even got advice to consider getting a protective order.
It's important to remember that leaving an abusive situation is incredibly difficult. There's often such a mix of fear and guilt and even like a hope that things will change. And it can take years for someone to feel strong enough to leave.
Yeah.
And in her case, this internal struggle was happening while other parts of her life were also falling apart.
Oh, yeah. 2018 was a really brutal year for her.
Yeah.
It started with a separation for her husband in January, and then both of her parents were hospitalized.
Oh, wow.
With some pretty serious health issues.
Oh, no.
In March.
Okay.
Her father, he was a double amputee.
Okay.
On dialysis.
Wow.
And her mom had really severe osteoarthritis.
Oh, my God.
So just a month later,
okay.
she gets laid off from her job.
Oh, no.
Of 11 years.
Wow.
No wonder she felt like she was under attack.
It's like everything was hitting at once.
Yeah, there's this really powerful moment described in the book.
Okay.
She's driving on the freeway, and it just hits her that she's in a spiritual battle.
Oh, wow.
She's at a crossroads.
Right.
Either let these events shatter her faith, or cling to it as a source of strength.
So what did she do?
So she chose to lean into her faith.
Okay.
Found comfort in prayer, worship music, and scripture.
Yeah.
Specifically, she found comfort from Psalm 34,
Okay.
which talks about God being attentive to the cries of the righteous. And that gave her this sense of hope.
Right.
That she wasn't alone in this, but she didn't just like passively rely on her faith. She was very active. She sought out counseling and support groups.
Yeah.
And this is where she really started to understand this pattern in her life that she hadn't recognized before, codependency.
Oh, interesting.
And I think that term might not be familiar to everyone.
Right.
So maybe it's worth explaining a little bit.
Absolutely. Codependency is essentially a pattern of prioritizing the needs of others
Hmm.
over your own well-being. And it often stems from childhood experiences
Oh, wow.
where you learn to kind of suppress your needs in order to please or appease a caregiver.
Right.
In her case, her father was described as very angry and demeaning, which likely contributed to her developing those codependent tendencies.
So she's dealing with this fallout from this difficult marriage,
Right.
caring for her parents, and on top of that, she's uncovering these patterns in herself.
Wow.
It's a lot.
It is, and this is really where her participation in Celebrate Recovery and a step study becomes so crucial. Those programs gave her a framework for understanding and addressing her codependency.
Right.
And they also offered a supportive community, which is so vital when you're going through tough times.
Yeah, one thing that really stood out to me was how she described the challenges of caregiving.
Yeah.
She talked about helping her father with bathroom needs
Right.
and feeling like it was a cruel punishment from God.
That raw honesty is so powerful. It shows the intense emotional toll that caregiving can take,
Right.
even when you love the person you're caring for.
Yeah, it would be so easy to get stuck in that resentment.
Right.
But she eventually has a shift in perspective.
Yes. And this shift is so important. She starts to recognize how much she was complaining and focusing on the negative and realizes she has a choice. Either continue down that path or intentionally cultivate gratitude.
So how does she actually make that shift? It's one thing to say, be more grateful.
Right.
But how do you actually do it?
You're absolutely right. It takes conscious effort. She had one day off each week, and she made the decision to savor those days, to focus on what she could do rather than what she couldn't.
Such a practical takeaway.
Yeah.
And it leads us to the next chapter of her story,
Okay.
facing the inevitable decline of her parents' health.
Right.
Her mother's heart connection gets worse
Oh, no.
and leads to another hospitalization in 2021.
Okay.
And there's this really poignant moment in the book where her mom expresses her belief that God is preparing her for death.
Oh, wow.
Like she's made peace with her mortality. And this forces Mary Alice to confront her own fears about death.
Right.
And particularly the fear of being present
Mm-hmm.
when her parents pass away.
Right.
Something she'd never experienced before.
Yeah. Yeah, it's remarkable how this whole experience with her mom, her mom's declining health, really sparked this process of self-reflection.
Right.
For Mary Alice, she starts to see these parallels between her father and her ex-husband, both exhibiting these, similar patterns of anger and lack of accountability.
Wow, that's a pretty powerful realization to see those echoes of the past. In her present relationships, did this insight change how she interacted with her dad at all?
It seems so. The source material describes how her work on understanding codependency really allowed her to approach her father's care with more empathy and detachment.
Okay.
It's not that she loved him any less, but she was able to separate his behavior from her own worth.
Yeah, it must have been so freeing to finally break free from those ingrained patterns of seeking validation from someone who wasn't capable of giving it.
Exactly. And this is where we see that transformative power of self-awareness. It's not about condoning bad behavior, but understanding where it comes from and choosing to respond differently.
Right? It's like she's finally able to set those boundaries that she couldn't before. But even with this new clarity,
Right.
she's still human.
Yeah.
She talks about the exhaustion, the frustration of having her life on hold, and the resentment that she sometimes felt towards her parents.
Yeah. It's so important to acknowledge those feelings. Caregiving is incredibly demanding, and it's okay to feel a range of emotions, even negative ones.
Yeah.
What's crucial is how we process and cope with those emotions.
Right. And for Mary Alice, it seems like gratitude played a major role in her coping mechanism. We touched on this earlier, but I'd love to dive into it a little bit deeper. It's a concept that comes up a lot in self-help and stuff,
Right.
but it can feel kind of abstract.
Yeah.
How did she actually put it into practice?
She made a conscious effort to focus on the positive aspects in her life, even the small things. Instead of dwelling on her limitations, she chose to appreciate those moments of joy and freedom that she did have, like her one day off each week.
So it's not just about feeling grateful, it's about actively seeking out things to be grateful for.
Right.
Did this shift have, like, a tangible impact on her well-being?
Absolutely. The source material suggests that this practice of gratitude helped her to manage stress, to find moments of peace amidst the chaos, and ultimately to cultivate a more optimistic outlook.
It's almost like training your mind to look for the good, even when things are really tough.
Right.
It's a powerful reminder that we actually have more control over our thoughts and feelings than we realize sometimes.
Yeah, precisely. And this brings us back to that idea of her journey being a spiritual battle. It wasn't just a battle against external circumstances, but also a battle against negativity, resentment, and despair.
Right, and it sounds like she chose her weapons carefully.
Hmm.
Faith, therapy, and a conscious cultivation of gratitude.
Yeah,
But unfortunately, her external battles weren't over.
right.
It was still facing the reality of her parents' declining health.
Yeah.
Her mom, in particular, seemed to be nearing the end.
And this brought up a whole new set of challenges for her.
Yeah,
She had to confront her fears
right.
about death
Yeah,
and make these difficult decisions about her mother's care,
yeah.
her conversations about medical interventions, end-of-life wishes, heavy stuff.
It sounds like a crash course in navigating those difficult end-of-life conversations. Did she share any insights at all about how she approached those discussions with her family?
She doesn't really go into detail about specific conversations, but she does emphasize the importance of expressing love and appreciation while you still have the chance. She made a conscious effort to tell her mother how much she loved and cared for her, even amidst the stress and exhaustion of caregiving.
That's such a valuable reminder for all of us to not let those important words go unsaid.
Yeah,
We often assume our loved ones know how we feel,
right.
but sometimes hearing it explicitly can make all the difference.
Absolutely. And this leads us to the inevitable. Mary Alice's mother passed away peacefully, surrounded by loved ones.
Yeah.
The source material describes this beautiful scene with the sunrise and this sense of her mother's spirit being lifted. It's almost poetic.
Yeah, it sounds like she found a way to find beauty, even in the midst of grief. Did she share anything about how she coped with the loss?
Yeah, she talks about leaning on her faith, finding comfort in the belief that her mother was no longer suffering and that they would one day be reunited. She also found solace in remembering the happy times and focusing on the legacy of love that her mother left behind.
So once again, faith and gratitude played a role in her healing process.
Yes. And I think it's important to note that this wasn't a denial of her grief. She clearly felt the pain of loss very deeply, but she also found ways to find meaning and hope amidst that pain.
Right. It's like, can grief and gratitude coexist?
Right.
It seems counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but in her case, it seems like they did.
I think they absolutely can. Grief is a natural response to loss, but it doesn't have to consume us entirely.
Yeah.
Gratitude can act as a counterbalance, reminding us of the good things in life, even when we're hurting.
It's like finding those little glimmers of light in the darkness. And for her, those glimmers seem to come from her faith, her memories, and her growing understanding of herself.
Right.
But her story doesn't end there. She still had her father to care for.
Right.
And sadly, he passed away just 6 months after her mother.
Oh, wow. So she faced another profound loss in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine the emotional toll that must have taken.
But this is where her journey takes an even more remarkable turn. She doesn't just survive these losses. She uses them as fuel for personal growth and transformation.
Exactly. The source material really emphasizes this idea of her not just enduring hardship, but actively learning and growing from it.
Right. So what were some of the key takeaways from her experience? What did she learn about herself and the world? I mean, it's like she went through a crucible, this trial by fire that really refined her in ways she never could have imagined. And what really strikes me is that she doesn't shy away from those raw, messy emotions that come with these experiences.
Right. That's so crucial. We often try to gloss over the difficult parts of life,
Right.
but it's in those messy, uncomfortable spaces that real growth happens.
Yeah.
Her story is such a good reminder that it's okay to not be okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to grieve, to be angry, to question, to doubt.
And it's through that process, that wrestling with those difficult emotions, that she really arrives at this deeper understanding of herself. The book highlights how she comes to this realization that she's a recovering codependent.
Right.
It's almost like she's reclaiming that label,
Yeah.
owning it as part of her journey.
There's a real sense of empowerment in that.
Yeah.
It's not about denying those tendencies, but acknowledging them, understanding their roots, and actively working to change those patterns.
And it's not just about her internal transformation either. Her relationships are affected too.
Right.
The book talks about how she's able to have much healthier boundaries now with friends and family. She's not afraid to say no or to express her needs anymore.
It's like she's finally learned to prioritize her own well-being, which is probably really challenging for her, given her codependent tendencies.
Yeah.
And this shift is a real testament to the work she put in, to understanding herself and breaking free from those unhealthy patterns.
It makes you wonder if those, challenging experiences, as difficult as they were, actually paved the way for this personal growth. Like, she needed to go through the fire to emerge as this strong, resilient person she became.
That's a really interesting perspective. It's not about glorifying suffering, but recognizing that sometimes the most difficult experiences can be catalysts for really profound transformation.
Right.
And her story is a perfect example of that. She didn't just survive these losses, she thrived in the face of them.
There's this quote from the book that I think really encapsulates this. She says, "I love the woman I have become on the other side of these trials."
Wow.
It's just so powerful, this declaration of self-acceptance and growth.
It speaks to the resilience of the human spirit, our ability to not only bounce back from adversity, but to actually become stronger and wiser and more compassionate because of it. Her story is a real testament to that inherent human potential.
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive into Mary Alice's incredible journey, what are some key takeaways our listeners can glean, for their own lives?
I think the most powerful lesson here is the importance of self-awareness. Understanding our own patterns, our strengths and our weaknesses is absolutely crucial for navigating life's challenges. Her story shows us that this self-discovery, it isn't always easy, but it's so rewarding.
Right, and it's never too late to embark on that journey of self-discovery. Whether you're facing a major life crisis or just feeling stuck, taking the time to understand yourself better can make a world of difference.
Absolutely. Another key takeaway is the power of gratitude. As we saw with Mary Alice, gratitude isn't just a feel-good emotion. It's an active practice that can really shift our perspective and help us cope with difficult times.
It's about choosing to focus on the light, even when surrounded by darkness.
Yeah.
And I think finally, her story reminds us that we're not alone in our struggles. Everyone faces challenges, everyone experiences loss, and everyone has the potential to emerge from those experiences stronger and wiser.
Beautifully said, I would add, that seeking support, whether through therapy or support groups, or even just trusted friends and family, is so crucial. We don't have to go through this journey alone.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. Mary Alice's story is a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope, resilience, and growth are always possible if you're going through something difficult right now. Remember her journey. Remember her courage. Remember her resilience. And remember, you too have the strength within you to navigate the darkness and emerge on the other side, stronger and wiser than before.